Hey y'all, it's JessMelodies coming to you with another episode of Chicago Got Next. On this week, we're going to be talking about artist Reggie Smokez. He just released a project not too long ago called Holy Smokez. Holy Smokez released on December 6th. Reggie Smokez is a rapper out of Chicago that reps the South Side. Not only does he have his latest project out, Holy Smokez, you can also check out a lot of other songs on his SoundCloud outside of this project. Alright y'all, so let's get into this album. One, if you're one of those people that really likes, that old school sound, that old school production, like this album is definitely for you. It's very nostalgic and it reminds me of like New York in the 90s. Like it almost reminds me of like a Jay-Z sound. For those who don't know, Jay-Z is my favorite rapper of all time, and if you listen to his earlier stuff like Reasonable Doubt and things like that, it has a very New York 90s sound. And so this project is very reminiscent of that. First track of the album is Genesis. Genesis is the first book of the Bible, so it makes sense that this is the first track. It's kind of like the intro into who is rapper Reggie Smokez. Each song starts off with a small clip of a news report. For this specific track, Genesis, the news report is about the police monitoring Facebook groups, and they're able to take down a few people who were selling drugs and selling guns through these Facebook groups. And so pretty much like a reminder that the government is watching everything that you are doing. And so it makes sense to not promote your crime on social media because you are easily tracked and found. You would think that would be common sense, but common sense ain't so common. Next song is called Mob City. This one starts off with a news report clip of the gun violence that takes place in Chicago, which seems to get all of the attention. It seems to be what all the outsiders know about and what they kind of connect Chicago to, guns, unfortunately. This song highlights the prison system. And so, pretty much it kind of relates to that 13th Amendment where, the prison system is a form of enslavement specifically for black people, specifically for black men. This song also talks about the corrupt city politics. All this money that we're generating, and yet where is the money going? And so, Reggie Smokez kind of alludes to the money going in these politicians' pockets. Reggie Smokez talks about, the mundane habit of, the 9 to 5 and how it's just habitual. You wake up, you go to work, you spend 9 hours at the job, you come home, you do it again the next day, and just that repetitive cycle and how it is draining, especially when, you don't see your life, in that type of capacity. And here's the thing, not everybody is built to be the boss. If everybody's a boss, who's the workers? I talk about this all the time. And so, some people, it's in them to be in a corporate environment and just be an individual contributor. And it's nothing wrong with that. That's your journey. Your journey isn't going to be the same as someone else's. And so for those that are creatives and see their lives outside of, being stuck into a 9 to 5 and contributing to someone else's company that's not theirs, it can be very draining when you see so much more for yourself. Reggie talks about how, he wants more for himself, but, there's very limited options around him. And he's like, I'm just hoping that this rap game works for me. He also talks about how the limited options and, people's environment contributes a lot to the illegal activity that takes place. I mean, people are desperate and money has to be made, bills have to be paid. And so, when you don't have many options around you, it's almost like you're given no choice, or, a lot of people aren't aware of the options that are around them. And so one, just that lack of education that's just taking place. And so some people feel that, all they have to turn to is the streets. All right, so next song, Gray featuring John. In the song Gray, it talks about, just this vicious cycle of death. And how, because it's so much death around people, how people just become desensitized to it, whether it be, folks in the streets dying, or, even when it comes to like these school shootings, if you all notice, when you see different reports on school shootings, there's not much outrage anymore. It's like that way of life is becoming normalized, and it's scary. Reggie Smokez talks about how, he's not getting mixed up in the streets and how he's different. He's very positive in this one. He's talking about his grind and him being focused and speaking things into existence, but not only speaking things into existence, but doing the work that it takes behind it for it to manifest. When the featured artist John comes in, it kind of sounds like, a narration. It doesn't sound like a feature verse. It sounds like him narrating the song. What I like about the entire project is that it's storytelling. And it's almost like, you get to each song and it's like, okay, what's next? What's next to the story? It talks about classism and the effects of that. And then John talks about how Chicago summers make the winter worth it. And I'm going to just say this right now, John. I don't agree with that. Okay, first of all, with all this, the climate changing and all that other type of stuff, we barely even get summertime shy anymore. That's one. Two, these winters are just, it's unbearable. It's unbearable. I love Chicago, but I hate the winters, and so I don't agree with you. Chicago summers do not make the winters worth it. We don't deserve to have bitter winters like we do. We don't deserve it. So I have to disagree with that one. All right, so Red Line featuring Don B. Hayes. Now, this is one of my favorite songs on the album for sure. There's a jazz sound to the production. The vocals were an amazing addition to the song, and Don B. Hayes' verse was super dope. So the entire concept of the song was just super amazing, and hence why this is one of my favorite songs of the album. This song talks about the hustle and bustle. I mean, people really wanting to just have that American dream, the success, and success is relative. Then we get to the next song of the album, Chicago Love. Y'all, this is another one of my favorite songs. Like, when you listen to Chicago Love, it's almost like this pride that you feel. Like, yeah, this is my city. I'm from here. You know what I mean? And what I really like is that Reggie Smokez is really objective. Not only does he talk about the bad, but he also talks about the good. And to me, I think that Chicago's good definitely outweighs the bad, but the way that it's portrayed in the media, it's like, there's nothing good happening here in Chicago, and it's nothing but people being slaughtered in the streets. And it's just like, I can't preach this enough. Like, that is not the city of Chicago. It's a beautiful place. It's like the song Chicago Love is the Chicago that they don't tell you about in the media. And here's an example. Like, okay, I'm Nigerian, right? I've been to Nigeria, one of the most beautiful countries I have ever seen in my life. Not only is the culture rich, but the infrastructure is very rich as well. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful city, okay? But a lot of the American perception of just Africa as a whole is, everyone's walking around naked, everyone is living in poverty, the kids are starving, they have their big bellies because of disease, and just nothing good is happening in the entire continent of Africa. And that can't be the furthest thing from the truth. Once again, just like there are people living in poverty in, different countries in Africa, there are people living in poverty here in America. But that's the picture that they want to paint for you. And so if you haven't had a chance to visit a country in Africa, I would recommend Nigeria, because why not? But when you get that chance to get over there, you will see the most beautiful, beautiful continent in the world. In the world. Yes, I said it. In Chicago Love, Reggie Smokez is talking about just the richness of Chicago culture. In different Chicago staples, like, if you come here, you got to go to Harold's Chicken. You got to get that mild sauce. It talks about how, Chicago was the birthplace of Soul Train. It talks about Oprah when she had her studio here. The song talks about Kanye. It talks about our different sports teams. I mean, we did have a baseball team that recently won the World Series. We talk about the Bulls. Bulls, we talk about the Bears. When Reggie starts talking about Ye and the different Chicago sports teams, there's a lot of play on words. And it was that moment when I knew, I'm like, yo, he's proper with the pen game. Really proper. You gotta listen to the song to know what I'm referring to on that one. Once again, this song is all about Chicago pride, and I think that it was a great choice of a last song. Chicago Love is the last song of the album before you get to the outro. The outro was called Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible. It's almost like, this is finished. This one is a freestyle just like the intro was. The outro was almost like a prayer to me, where he's quoting different scriptures in the Bible. For example, your gift will make room for you, Proverbs 18:16. Walk by faith, not by sight, 2 Corinthians 5:7. This entire album is very cohesive, very well and strategically put together. It definitely takes you on a journey. And it's a very complete journey from start to finish, kind of reminiscent of that storytelling that I was talking about in the beginning. And I would say that the production of Holy Smokez is very mild and not as complex, but very simple. Reggie Smokez is definitely a Chicago rapper that got next. Once again, check out his latest project, Holy Smokez, on SoundCloud. That is also where you will find additional music. You all let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Do you think that Reggie Smokez got next? Okay? Make sure that you like this video. Make sure you share this to all of your social media platforms. And most importantly, subscribe. JessMelodies, Chicago got next. Thanks for checking it out.